amazing. First time ever, so you have no expectation particularly, but it was very eclectic. I met a whole bunch of people that I would never have met otherwise. I met people that I now consider global Indians.
Right.
A gentleman who was originally born in Kenya, lives in the UK, studied in Southern California, works in UAE. Talk about global India,
Right.
and in very high positions. Opportunity to meet so many young people. There were new voices at this conference, and startups and people who are trying to change the world and have such a lot of mission. Very exciting. I think the fact that we are able to pull this thing off, that MR was reaching into 30 countries and bringing people and enabling them to come, it says the platform was needed even before we knew we needed the platform.
Right.
So the platform seems to have arrived at the same moment that people have arrived.
Right.
And doing this in India, like the government does with Pravasi and so on, is very useful. But this is private. This is business. This is entrepreneurship. This is trying to say, can Indians across all these fault lines, because you have fourth generation Indians, second generation, third generation, coming together and saying there is something core to our existence that ties to India.
Right.
But it's not only about India. So if we do good, can we do it for the world, but using our Indianness as the sort of core of it? So to me, I think we have touched a nerve. And if we can figure out a way to continue to talk about the stories that come out of this and the things that are occurring because people got together, then I think we'll have more success in the future. It is less about that per se than it is about learning by example.
Right.
So when you look at somebody like Sunil Wadhwani and you see success, but you then see the give back and activist give back. So it's not just I gave money and I wrote a check, but activists give back. And then participation in gatherings like this where they are willing to mentor and offer their advice. I think that is incredibly valuable. It sets examples, models, and provides potentially other resources. But I think that's going to be very unique if you can bottle it and sort of capsulize it and make it into, weave that into everything that is done. That is a very unique feature. But there have been many organizations over the years that have tried these things and done them, like Thai still does it. So yes, at that level, but at a different level, I think you create role models. The role modeling is so important if we are to really change the future. You know, I see what people are doing in healthcare. I see what they're doing in education. My two areas of focus have really been strongly on housing, shelter. How can we contribute to improving the expectation and the realization of shelter across the universe, across the globe, and democracy? The building of institutions that are forward-thinking on democracy, that encourage and teach civics and encourage civic participation, so that whatever we are saying to ourselves about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, it should become part of the philosophy of every candidate running for office.
Right.
Why are we not thinking more holistically about our contributions and our contributions to the whole universe? And yet the world has become even more nationalistic and more narrow. And so I'm going to argue that there is a whole thinking that needs to happen in our community as well about thinking bigger and broader about democracy and reform and change, so that we can really realize those kinds of dreams. And that's my mission now. My job is to build out frameworks and institutions that are strong, that can stand the test of time, that are intergenerational, and that think about democracy, but in institution building across borders.
Right.
A lot has changed. I mean, the way the US is viewed and the perception in Europe, for example, I think there's a fundamentally different perception. But I think that not much has actually changed. So I don't want to be overly pessimistic that, oh my God, things have fallen apart. It feels like it sometimes, but I'm not overwhelmed by that. I want to see the results. But I think at the end of the day, we have self-correcting mechanisms. If they overreach, there will be correction. And in order to preserve those corrections, one must have a democracy so you can correct. That's how self correction takes place in a system. And the second thing is, very importantly, you must have an alternate view that you can propagate and talk about. I think Indians have long views. I'm already thinking 5 years out.
Right.
We have to think beyond what exists today. But the building of institutions is the critical piece in all of this. If you don't have strong institutions, and they're not about election cycles, they're about how do people participate, engage, feel included, and then when and if we get representation, what do they do with that? How do they behave? I feel like we've made some progress in America, but we've also gone backwards. So now it's our turn to step back up into the ring. And it's not about arguing against one side or for another. It's about building ourselves and our institutions. I like the fact that we are more independent. People need to work hard to get our vote. But what I don't like is I think there's been some slippage. We dramatically increased our voter participation from 2016 to 2020, but it seems to have slipped in 2024. And we are trying to understand, why was there apathy? What did we do wrong? What did everybody do wrong? Because democracy only thrives when people participate. So our community not participating as much is a bad sign. It has to be fixed. And a lot of new people have become citizens. So perhaps our biggest mistake was not going and talking to them and reaching them and saying, this is why it's so important. You owe it to your children to participate. So I think we have work to do. No question. That is the lesson I learned. I'm amazed. I'm completely amazed. When I went to the first, I think in upstate New York, I had no belief that something like this was even possible. I didn't even know what Emma was trying to do. I have a much better appreciation for why it's so valuable, how it can change things. And I think the stories that come out of this, the amazing experiences, tell you something that is very important. You bring people together. They don't have to have common purpose or one purpose, but you encourage them to collaborate. And by that conscious collaboration, you can create magic. I think MR creates magic.